v. the Inclusive Communities Project, and will decide later this year whether to uphold the disparate impact doctrine, as 11 appellate courts have done for years. For 40 years. So our Secretary Castro is, in commenting on disparate impact, acknowledged that the legal doctrine is a vital tool in HUD's efforts to fight housing discrimination. So now in these 30 years, I've worked for Republican governors and presidents and Democrat governors and presidents. You know, this issue of disparate impact is being played out as a political question. I don't see that it is. As a civil servant, I serve equally and as enthusiastically for the principles that I've served in those positions. And I think that what the department is doing in this light, it may not always do it correctly and certainly not at a comfort level. You know, if you're Westchester County, you're probably fairly uncomfortable to have the light of HUD on you in the last few years. But I think as communities look forward, as your community looks forward, you know, if you look inward and say, you know, and take a look at what are the trends in the city of Schenectady, city of Troy is here with us as well. You know, what can we look at proactively to ensure that we just do the right thing, as the mayor said earlier. So lest we think these problems don't exist in our backyard, I'll go back to my original 2 examples. And let me just tell you, those 2 examples happened here in Schenectady, New York, recently, in the last few years, okay? So the community came together to say, hey, did you really mean this? And no, we didn't really mean that, so it's all right. So our esteemed institution did the right thing. We knew they would. It was me that was taken around by, no, not one of you, a realtor to take a look at houses and said, hey, you know, you got a 15-year-old, right? I don't know. They didn't know I was the HUD guy, I guess, and I was new as the HUD guy, or I don't know, I probably would have sued him. We took a different approach last year when we had our summit that your city hosted. We brought in our Fair Housing Assistant Secretary, and we brought in all the realtors and the brokers, and you know, the mayor and I went out and talked to the brokers in the area, and they said, geez, no, that's not what we mean to do. So we provided some training. We collaborated with the mortgage bankers and with the realtors and said, hey, we may want to look at this. And that's 90, you know, if you have 360 million people, okay, that's a lot of the times what's going on. But it's better if you look at it yourselves, okay? In the 25 counties that I'm responsible for, in the 11 cities, that's really what I strive for, to say, hey, what's going on that's terrible in other parts of the country? What's going on here that's questionable? And what can we do together to make sure that we move the ball forward and make it so that as our kids grow, they don't scratch their heads and wonder what's wrong with us. Okay, so I really appreciate the opportunity to be here with you. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, I have to tell you, I have to restate where I started. This is an excellent city. You have a great, I wouldn't even say a foundation, because we're doing some work in Utica, like we did with you for 18 months, and really your city is the example. I look at Schenectady as the city that has the opportunity to be the Raleigh-Durham in the north, right? There are millennial-aged people that are making a decision to stay here. You have, you know, Quirky and Transfinder and others that are staying here. You made an investment in Nano, and you know, rather than thinking about going to Florida someday, I'm thinking about how can I have a house here in Schenectady and be able to walk down and take advantage downtown and take advantage of some of these great things. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thanks.
Is Cora here? Cora Schroeder. Congressman Paul Tonko, always, he's been so nice to the city of Schenectady, and especially to the Fair Housing Office. He attended many of these luncheons, and Cora was supposed to, his constituent representative was supposed to present a proclamation from the office of Congressman Paul Tonko, but since she's not here, we thank Congressman for the proclamation, and we'll keep it, and maybe at the end of the program we will read it. As the mayor said, Jamie is a true friend of the city of Schenectady, and we thank him for all his assistance in helping us with many issues, and we know that HUD is right around the corner from us, and we count on his help. For the first time, We're very happy to have the presence of Lorraine Collins. Lorraine is Assistant Commissioner, Director of Fair Housing, Equitable Housing Office, and Equitable Housing Office for the New York State Homes and Community Renewal. Assuming the role in December 2014, Ms. Collins has been tasked with creating an office that will focus on development of a more proactive approach to remove regulatory barriers at the state level and to affirmatively further fair housing. We're delighted to have Lorraine with us today to help us understand the vision of New York State HCR and her office. Ms. Collins.
Good afternoon, everyone. Feel free to chew as I chat. I don't want you to, stomachs to start grumbling, but truly it is an honor and a pleasure to be here today on behalf of Governor Andrew Cuomo and our esteemed Commissioner Darrell Towns. Here today to celebrate Fair Housing Month with the City of Schenectady. I would like to thank Mayor McCarthy, Ahmad, and all of the city staff and partners who have come together to continue to illustrate the city's support of this very important topic. I would also like to acknowledge and thank our federal friend, Jaime Ferrero. As he had mentioned during his remarks, it really is HUD who's making or establishing the leadership in terms of where our nation is going on this topic. Under Secretary Donovan and now Secretary Castro, they're really setting the bar at the national level, and it's really behooving state government and local government to jump on board and be just as excited about making sure that we have equity throughout communities across our nation. I'm very excited to share with you how New York State Homes and Community Renewal is also illustrating its support and commitment to fair and equitable housing. This past winter, Commissioner Towns created HCR's Fair and Equitable Housing Office. Although the agency had previously had an Office of Fair Housing Equal Opportunity, Commissioner Towns really wanted to have an office that was solely dedicated to fair housing and really put some policies into place where we could be more proactive in the work that we do, working across agencies within the housing umbrella, but also as we collaborate and connected with our partners externally as well. My office focuses on the development of a more proactive approach to removing regulatory barriers at the state level and to affirmatively further fair housing. We are looking at how the agency's public investments affect the larger housing market and are working to strengthen relationships both internally amongst agency staff as well as engage our partners to ensure affordable housing is available in all areas of the state. As Jamie mentioned, this issue of disparate impact, when we were creating the office and trying to decide what the name of the office would be, instead of just sticking with fair housing, we thought it was very important to add in that equity piece because in this day and age, making sure that all Americans have access to opportunities, whether those opportunities involve education, whether they involve healthcare, employment opportunities, that really is a mission that we're taking very seriously and something that's been near and dear to Commissioner Towns. To date, FEHO, as we're known, has already begun to work in concert with HCR's various units to aid in producing HUD-required reports and documents, including our revised analysis of impediments to fair housing choice, which will be submitted this fall. We're also working in collaboration on the Section 3 required forms and as well as the consolidated plan. We are also responsible for reviewing and approving all affirmative marketing plans that are required by any state or federal program. We are researching best practices and making policy recommendations to HCR's executive team, board members, as well as the executive chamber regarding various fair and equitable housing issues and laws. Additionally, FEHO plays an integral role in working with CDBG and home program staff in forming subgrantees of their Section 3 requirements and assisting them in meeting said requirements by developing strategic outreach and training efforts for Section 3 residents and businesses. I was actually very excited to hear the news that Jamie shared, and I'm thinking that was probably at a national level, the Section 3 numbers. You know, I will be quite frank and honest to say that in the state of New York, we do have a ways to go in making sure that municipalities are taking seriously the Section 3 requirements and are providing opportunities for those residents and businesses. Most importantly, our office serves as a resource for agency staff to ensure that we are working together to provide safe, affordable, and fair housing to the people of New York State. Today I'm joined by counsel from our office, Salika Grant. Would you please stand and be acknowledged? And I also see a couple of familiar faces in the audience. Ann Nobles, who's a daughter of the city of Schenectady, and wave your hand. And Sherry Eccles I saw as well from our Office of Finance and Development. In closing, I look forward to developing a working relationship with the city of Schenectady, other municipalities, as well as private and not-for-profit organizations here in the Capital District, those who are truly dedicated to eliminating housing and lending discrimination in the state of New York. Thank you again, Mayor McCarthy and Ahmad, for the invitation, and in celebration of the millennial generation, again, that Jamie made reference to in his remarks, hashtag Fair Housing Matters.
Again, it's truly a pleasure to see wonderful people like you being here again today, supporting the city of Schenectady and the Fair Housing Office. We're very delighted. And thank you, Ms. Collins, for the great remarks. Schenectady Municipal Housing Authority is the city of Schenectady's biggest rental property owner. That means it's the biggest landlord. We would like to thank the Executive Director, Richard Hominick, and his staff by providing decent, safe, and affordable housing to many of the city renters who otherwise would not be able to find appropriate living shelter if it was not for the Schenectady Municipal Housing Authority. Mr. Hominick.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to be here with so many friends in one place. Thank you, Mr. Yusufi and Mayor McCarthy, for this important celebration of the Fair Housing Act today. Our housing authority is privileged to provide 602 subsidized apartments for families with children and 416 subsidized apartments for elderly and disabled families. We also administer 1,387 Section 8 Housing Choice vouchers within the city of Schenectady, working in partnership with over 500 property owners. In addition, we have 41 single-room occupancy units at the new YMCA facility on Broadway, and 8 single-room occupancy units with the YWCA, and 40 Shelter Plus Care vouchers for homeless families that we administer. We have over 2,100 applicants waiting for subsidized housing in Schenectady. Between all programs and our waiting lists, we serve over 4,500 families daily. I'd like to emphasize the importance of having a fair housing office in Schenectady headed by Ahmad Yusufi. Many people living in poverty are desperate to locate and maintain good quality housing, and some will tolerate poor conditions and unequal treatment by property owners out of fear of losing their home. It is an asset to our community to have a fair housing office that people can turn to and not have to worry about retaliation for doing so. So thank you, Mayor McCarthy, for allowing this office to continue in our city. I'd like to focus a moment on the people that make fair housing a reality at our housing authority. Daily, they devote their lives to jobs that are as equally challenging as they are rewarding, and they are such an important part of what we celebrate today. With me today are some of my staff I'd like to mention. Melissa Elbertowski, she's our property manager of 302 apartments at Steinmetz Homes, McGaffin Townhouses, and Maryvale Apartments. We also have Deborah LaRange, who's a property manager for 302 apartments at Yates Village. I thought Dina Puente was here, but maybe she didn't make it, but she's our property manager for 416 apartments at Shawnee Village, Lincoln Heights, and Tenike. Also with us is Greg Hoffman, our legal counsel, very important part of our team. Lynn Latella is here. She's our human resources person. Very important because everybody wants to get paid, right? Also with me are a couple of commissioners on my board of commissioners. Marva Isaacs, right up here in front. And Denise Clark is sitting back there also. Denise, hello. Denise and Marva do a great job keeping me in line, let me tell you. They're great community activists and have no problem letting me know if there's a problem that I need to handle in the community. So although these folks I just mentioned may leave work every day focused solely on the challenges that will face them the next day, I remind them, when I can, to take some time to focus on the positive results of their work, which is simply providing shelter for 2,500 families. That's no small task, and I applaud you for the good service you provide so many families in need, so thank you. In addition, the Housing Authority works with numerous Schenectady agencies, including, I'll mention a few of our long-standing relationships, the Legal Aid Society, Schenectady Community Action Program, Human Rights Commission, Bethesda House, of course the Fair Housing Office, Schenectady Inner City Ministry, the YMCA, the Boys and Girls Clubs, the YWCA, the school district, and Better Neighborhoods. I know there's a lot more, but those come to mind immediately as some long-term partners that we've had working on the same side of the table and sometimes on opposing sides of the table to solve problems. But we all work for the same goals of fair and equal treatment of the protected classes under the Fair Housing Act. Fair housing is our responsibility today as much as it was the people's responsibility in 1968, immediately after President Lyndon Johnson signed the Fair Housing Act into law. But despite the Fair Housing Act, protected classes still experience outright discrimination. Ethnic and racial minorities are impacted the most by housing discrimination, but recent studies are showing a growing trend toward discrimination in the housing market against those who identify themselves as gay, lesbian, or transgender. Same-sex couples are often given higher rental rates and less encouragement to rent, which are both examples of what I consider housing discrimination. These are new challenges that perhaps we didn't face when the Fair Housing Act was made into law, but there will be and continue to be new challenges that we must face collectively. So our collective mission is to keep fighting for the people who are victims of housing discrimination. We are all on the front line of assuring the protections that have been put in place are upheld and enforced. I look forward to continuing our work together on this critical mission. Thank you very much.
As Mr. Hominick said, he mentioned Marva Isaac. Marva Isaac was just, I think 2 nights ago, she was recognized and she was given an award by the YWCA of a woman of, from Angela, Santa Barbara. The Assemblyman of Santa Barbara has awarded Marva by giving her the Woman of Distinction Award. So congratulations, Marva, and Marva is also the neighborhood president too, Hamilton Hill neighborhood. She's been very active and involved in the community. Thank you, Mr. Homnick. Our last speaker, the best speaker, my good friend, Angelica Morris, the Executive Director of Schenectady County Human Rights Commission, although she does not need an introduction. And all of you know her, or at least most of you do. Angelica has helped Schenectadians know their civil rights and to keep the dream of Martin Luther King Jr. alive and to fight for equal rights every day for those in need. Angelica Morris.
Good afternoon. I want to thank Mayor McCarthy for inviting me to be a guest speaker today. I'm very humbled and privileged. When I got the invite, I kind of was shocked, and sometimes that doesn't happen really often, but I just want to say thank you, Mr. Mayor, for inviting me to share about the Human Rights Commission, our previous history with fair housing, and just give you a personal story of my background with fair housing and public housing. Secondly, I want to thank Ahmad for doing all that he has done with the Fair Housing Program since I was a former staffer in City Hall, and we've been friends since that time. So thank you, Ahmad, again, for your kind words. I appreciate it. Thirdly, I just want to congratulate all the awardees today for your dedication and commitment to fair housing and to continue your excellent customer service that you are giving our residents in the areas of fair housing. So continue to do the good work that you're doing and promoting equal opportunity in housing. So congratulations. I also want to ditto what Rich has said about the long-term partnerships that the Human Rights Commission has had and continue to have here in not only the city but in the county with all the agencies and organizations that he mentioned. And then to all those in the room that are familiar faces to me, I will continue to work and partner and collaborate with all you all to continue this conversation of fair housing and to continue to support the mayor and the Fair Housing Department and the Homes Program to ensure that all our residents has fair and equal opportunities in housing. Everyone has a fundamental right with housing with human rights. The Human Rights Commission has been existing now for 50 years, and with our part of fair housing, we did a lot of fair housing for over 30 years, up until the last 4 or 5 years. We had an emergency shelter program that was funded by the state and the federal government, where if a family or individual would be evicted or was homeless, they would come to our office, get a voucher, and we will give the voucher to the Salvation Army, City Mission, Bethesda House, and those folks would utilize those services from those agencies. We no longer do that. However, we still has the partnership with the Fair Housing Program regarding security deposit and also landlord and tenant issues. I get continuous calls currently from folks who explains and complains to me about their landlord issues or tenant issues, security deposit issues. I listen to them, I hear them, because people just want to be heard, they want to be appreciated, and they just want to know that somebody at least will address their issue. So what I do is I field those calls, and then I give those calls to Ahmad and his team, and then they do what they do. So we continue to have a good relationship within fair housing here in Schenectady County and with the city, and with all the local agencies that is represented here, that you do that. So I just want to say that this is a fundamental human right to housing, which ensures access to safe, secure, and affordable homes with freedom from forced eviction. and it is the government's obligation to guarantee that everyone can exercise this right to live in security, peace, and dignity. This right must be provided to all persons, irrespective of income or access to economic resources. So I just want to share a little bit of statistics with you all. I'm a person, I do a lot of independent research and data. I'm a big data statistics, that's what my background is. I minored in that when I went to college besides majoring in political science, public policy. I did this about early part of this year on a study that I was involved with another coalition of groups that I was part of. And the numbers that I looked at was pretty interesting. Comparing the city of Schenectady to the minority community or the people of color here in America and the census of 2012 community survey and the US Census of 2013. So did you know that the number for home ownership according to the US Census in 2013 here in the city of Schenectady is 48.8%. However, the home ownership of people of color is only 23%. Across the country, many working class people of color, mainly African Americans, struggle to obtain affordable housing. The percentage of black homeowners decreased between 2005 and 2012 from 46% to 42.5%. And this was based on the bailout of Franny, does everyone know Franny and Freddie Mac? Okay. Housing legislation and Obama's assistance that helped a lot of people, especially blacks who had mortgages that went into foreclosure. Also, majority of the people of color here in the city of Schenectady is 40%. Majority of those people live into the 12307 or 12303 zip codes. 45% of people of color are on DSS, public assistance, or get cash assistance. However, in America, 11.5% of African Americans live in government housing or Section 8 housing, while 13.6% receives cash assistance. The average home in Schenectady, according to the US Census, is $114,009, and the average rent in the city of Schenectady is $761. However, across the country within the minority community, the median gross rent went from